podcast.
With your hosts, Jill Valentine and Sebastian Castellanos.
Let's get into the show.
Okay, you ready for this? Today's deep dive is going to be interesting. You guys sent in some source material. And, well, let's just say we're diving into the wonderful world of Pistol Pete's Pizza Palace birthday parties. We're talking screaming kids, questionable hygiene, and enough sensory overload to make your head spin. I got my noise-canceling headphones and a whole thing of antacids ready here.
You might need those.
But is this GoreTV article we're diving into really as scary as it sounds? What do you think?
It's definitely playing on some pretty relatable fears. I mean, everyone remembers going to a children's birthday party, right? But it's interesting how the article brings all these different things together. Like, we're talking about commercialism and hygiene and just like the chaos of it all. Yeah. And they use a budget-friendly pizza joint to make that point.
Okay, so maybe not like an actual horror movie, but still pretty terrifying in a different way. They describe the entrance as a wall of screams, smells, and fluorescent nightmares. And honestly, that's giving me flashbacks to my own childhood birthday parties.
Yeah, they use sensory details really well to like set the stage. And you're totally right. It is a common experience. Think about the last time you walked into a place like that. Flashing lights, loud noises, the smell of pizza and chlorine all at the same time. It's a lot. Now, imagine you're a little kid and you're experiencing that for the first time. No wonder things can feel kind of overwhelming.
And that's not just like a clever writing tactic, right? That's how our brains actually work.
Totally. When you're a little kid, your brain is still figuring out how to filter all that stuff out. Like, adults have built-in sensory filters so they don't get overwhelmed as easily. So for a kid, it's like everything is turned up to 11.
And let's not forget the special aroma they described. They said it's thick with the smell of pizza grease, sugary soda, and maybe feet. Maybe feet. Like, is Pistol Pete skimping on the foot washing station?
See, that's where they get you. They're messing with what we expect. We all know what those places smell like. But then they add in that one questionable detail, and suddenly you're questioning everything.
Okay, but let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Or maybe we should say the questionable pizza in the cardboard box. The article calls it a slice of pure questionable substance. Has we been lied to our whole lives? Is pizza not actually the ultimate comfort food?
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think it's more about what this kind of pizza represents. Remember those articles you sent about food science? They were talking about how cheap pizza is made with all these processed ingredients and artificial flavors and preservatives. It's all to make sure that every pizza tastes exactly the same, consistent texture, that sort of thing.
So not exactly the artisanal wood-fired pizza of your dreams. More like the culinary equivalent of a sensory overload.
Yes, right? You could say that. And it all ties back into how much people worry about where their food comes from these days. I mean, you see it everywhere. Documentaries, online forums, you name it. People are paying more attention to what's in their food and how it's made. And I think that makes them a little skeptical of cheap food.
Which makes that image of the kids going crazy over the pizza even funnier. They're totally oblivious to all of the potentially horrifying ingredients.
It's true. They have no idea.
They're just living their best sugar-crazed lives. It's kind of like a metaphor for how great it is to be a kid.
That's a good point. The article definitely plays with that contrast. On the one hand, you've got these kids who are just like super psyched to be eating pizza. And on the other hand, you've got all the adults who are low-key freaking out about it.
And just when you think those kids might need a nap after all that questionable pizza, it's time for the main event, the ball pit. But of course, GoreTV couldn't just call it a ball pit. They had to call it a swirling soup of germs, broken dreams, and a terrifyingly dark unknown at the bottom. I'm not going to lie, that description kind of made me shudder.
It's amazing how something so innocent can also be so terrifying. I mean, the ball pit is like this universal symbol of childhood, right? But it also fills us with this deep-seated sense of dread. Remember that research you sent about child development and play?
Oh, yeah, totally. There was that one study about how kids assess risk in play environments.
Exactly, that's the one. So for kids, the ball pit is this really interesting mix of sensory stimulation and calculated risk. It lets them test their limits in a safe environment, like they get to jump and dive and disappear for a few seconds. And I think that really speaks to their sense of independence and exploration.
Which makes sense when you think about it. I mean, even as adults, there's something really freeing about jumping into a ball pit.
For sure. But I think as adults, we're also more aware of the downsides, like all those germs.
Yeah.
The article knows how to play on that fear. Like when they use phrases like terrifyingly dark unknown, they know they're freaking people out.
It's like the ball pit becomes this metaphor for all the unknown and potentially scary things in life.
Absolutely. You start out with this sense of wonder and excitement, but then you realize that maybe there's a good reason why those balls are sticky. And that's where the broken dreams part of the description comes in. It's not just about literal dirt. It's about realizing that nothing is as perfect as it seems, even something as simple as a ball pit.
Well, that took a turn. I'm going to need a minute to process all that before we move on. Speaking of processing, next up we have the cake. And from the sounds of it, this isn't your average birthday cake. GoreTV calls it a sugar-fueled frenzy waiting to happen. How does one even prepare for that level of dessert-based chaos?
Well, it's important to remember the psychology at play here. Cake, especially at a birthday party, is more than just a dessert. It's like a symbol of celebration, a reward for making it another year. It's a signal that it's time to get excited and indulge.
So you're saying it's not even about the sugar rush. It's like a sugar-fueled societal expectation. Okay, but how do you actually make it through one of these Pistol Pete's cake-cutting ceremonies without losing your mind? Or, starting a frosting fight. Asking for a friend, of course.
Well, the article says that the kids were diving face first into the frosting. So yeah, it sounds pretty intense. I think the key is to manage your expectations. You have to accept that things are going to get a little crazy.
That's good advice for life in general.
And maybe wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty.
Or invest in one of those plastic bubble suits for maximum cake protection. Okay, but here's where the GoreTV article gets really interesting. They barely even mention the animatronics. You know those creepy robot bands they always have at these places? It's like even the robots are like, nope, we're out of here.
I think that says a lot about how we see entertainment these days. You've got these robots that are supposed to be fun and exciting, but then you've got these real kids who are having a blast. And the robots just can't compete with that.
So you're saying the real uncanny valley isn't the robots themselves, it's the difference between how we think kids should act and how they actually act.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if the kids even notice the robots. Maybe they're so used to being overstimulated that nothing phases them anymore.
Maybe after the ball pit and the cake, a few creepy robots don't seem so bad.
I think you might be onto something. It really shows you how adaptable humans are, especially kids.
Which is a good thing.
Definitely.
Well, I think we've officially survived our deep dive into the world of Pistol Pete's birthday parties. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Embrace the chaos. Find the humor in the situation. And maybe try to see the world through the eyes of a kid who's experiencing it all for the first time.
Words to live by. Thanks for diving in with me today.
Anytime.
And to our listeners, until next time, happy exploring.